The courtroom felt like a tomb, every whisper echoing off marble walls as Lisa Richardson sat perfectly still, her dark hands folded in her lap while her world crumbled around her. The jury's eyes avoided hers. 12 faces that had already decided her guilt before the first witness took the stand. Behind her, she could feel the weight of her husband's family filling the gallery, their satisfaction radiating like heat from a fire she was about to be thrown into. The defendant willfully and maliciously destroyed company property valued at over $2 million. The prosecutor's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Lisa's breath caught as she watched the man she'd loved for 3 years, the man whose ring still gleamed on her finger, sit motionless in the front row. Davies's jaw was clenched, his blue eyes fixed on some point beyond her shoulder, as if looking at her might crack the careful mask he'd worn for weeks. The manila envelope in the prosecutor's hand contained everything. Forged documents with her digital signature, fabricated emails from her company account, even security footage that had been expertly doctored to show her entering the server room at midnight. Lisa's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized the terrifying precision of it all. How every piece of evidence had been crafted to destroy not just her career, but her freedom. As the judge's gavel fell, scheduling her sentencing for the following month, Lisa's eyes finally found Davies's across the crowded courtroom. For just a moment, she saw a flicker of something. Regret? Guilt, before his mother's perfectly manicured hand touched his shoulder, and he looked away again. Had he known all along, or had they made him choose between her and everything he'd ever inherited? 3 years earlier, Lisa Michaels had been the rising star of Whitmore Financial's cybersecurity division, brilliant, ambitious, and unafraid to speak truth to power. She'd clawed her way out of Detroit's crumbling neighborhoods through pure intellect and stubborn determination, earning her MIT degree while working 3 jobs. Her colleagues respected her expertise, even if some never quite warmed to her presence in their exclusive world. Davies Whitmore III had never had to fight for anything in his 32 years. Heir to a financial empire built by his great-grandfather, he possessed the easy charm that came with generational wealth and classical good looks. But beneath his privileged exterior lived a man torn between duty and desire, between the expectations carved into his family's marble legacy and his own yearning for something real. Their first meeting had been electric, Lisa debugging a critical security breach while Davies, newly appointed to the board, watched her fingers fly across keyboards with the intensity of a concert pianist. She'd been the only person in the room who didn't defer to his last name, challenging his questions with sharp intelligence that left him speechless and inexplicably drawn to her fire. Davies's mother, Margaret Whitmore, ruled the family's social kingdom with velvet gloves and titanium resolve. She'd orchestrated marriages, political careers, and corporate mergers with the precision of a chess grandmaster. To her, Lisa represented everything dangerous about the modern world, unpredictable, uncontrollable, and utterly wrong for the Whitmore legacy. His sister Caroline had initially seemed different, offering Lisa tentative friendship over shared lunches and carefully neutral smiles at family gatherings. But blood, Lisa would learn, always ran thicker than solidarity. The moment everything changed came during a late-night security audit when Davies found Lisa alone in the server room, surrounded by glowing screens and empty coffee cups. She'd been tracking unusual network activity for hours, her dark eyes reflecting the blue light of cascading data. When their eyes met across the humming machinery, the air between them crackled with possibility. "You should go home," he said softly, stepping closer. "It's past midnight." "So should you." Her voice carried a challenge, but also an invitation. Davies moved until he stood behind her chair, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "What if I don't want to?" Lisa turned to face him, her professional mask slipping to reveal vulnerability she rarely showed anyone. "Then you'd better be sure about what you're starting, Davies Whitmore. Because I don't play games, and I don't back down from fights." His answer came in the form of a kiss, tentative at first, then deeper as years of careful boundaries dissolved. When they finally broke apart, Lisa's hand rested against his chest, feeling his heart race in rhythm with her own. "This is going to complicate everything," she whispered. "Good," Davies replied, his thumb tracing her cheek. "I'm tired of simple." That kiss would set into motion a chain of events that would either bind them together forever or destroy them both. In the months that followed, their secret romance bloomed in stolen moments, late dinners in hidden corners of the city, weekend getaways to his cabin upstate, quiet mornings when the world felt like it belonged only to them. Their relationship deepened like roots growing in secret soil. Davies would find excuses to visit Lisa's department, their professional interactions charged with unspoken desire. She would catch him staring at her during board meetings, his blue eyes promising continuation of conversations that began in whispered words against her neck. But love in the shadows carried its own weight. Lisa watched Davies navigate his family's expectations with increasing tension, saw how his jaw tightened whenever his mother mentioned suitable young women at charity galas. The Whitmore social circle felt like a minefield where every step could trigger an explosion that would separate them. "I hate this," Lisa confessed one evening as they sat in his car outside her apartment building. "Sneaking around like we're doing something wrong." Davies's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "My family just needs time to adjust. They don't know you like I do. Do they want to know me?" Lisa's question hung between them like smoke. "Or do they just see what I represent, everything that doesn't fit their perfect picture?" The answer came in small cruelties disguised as social etiquette. Margaret's icy politeness when Lisa accompanied Davies to family functions. Caroline's pointed comments about maintaining company culture. The way conversations stopped when Lisa entered rooms, then resumed in carefully coded language about appropriate boundaries and preserving traditions. But in private moments, their connection burned brighter. Davies would trace the story of Lisa's scars, the one on her palm from fixing her first computer, the thin line on her shoulder from a childhood accident, while she mapped the geography of his privileged softness with knowing fingers. They were opposite sides of the same coin, each teaching the other about worlds they'd never imagined. The tension reached a breaking point during the company's annual gala, when Margaret cornered Lisa in the ladies' room with steel wrapped in silk. "You're very accomplished, dear," Margaret said, her reflection meeting Lisa's in the mirror. "But surely you understand that some bridges are too wide to cross. Davies has responsibilities that extend far beyond personal preferences." Lisa straightened her shoulders, meeting Margaret's gaze with unwavering strength. "With respect, Mrs. Whitmore, Davies is a grown man capable of making his own choices about his life and his heart." The older woman's smile could have frozen champagne. "How refreshing. Most people in your position would be more pragmatic." The proposal came on a rain-soaked Thursday evening in Lisa's apartment, with Davies kneeling beside her couch while takeout containers cooled on the coffee table. The ring, his grandmother's emerald surrounded by diamonds, caught the lamplight as he stammered through words he'd clearly rehearsed. "I know my family has been challenging," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can't imagine my life without you in it. I choose you, Lisa. I choose us." Through tears, Lisa said yes, but even as Davies slipped the ring onto her finger, she sensed the tremor in his hands, the fear threading through his joy. That night, as he slept beside her, she lay awake wondering if love would be enough to weather the storm she could feel building on the horizon. The wedding planning became a battlefield disguised as celebration. Margaret took control with military precision, making decisions that systematically erased Lisa's preferences. The venue changed from Lisa's choice of a botanical garden to the Whitmore family church. The guest list swelled with faces Lisa didn't recognize, while her own family and friends were relegated to a small section. "It's just tradition," Davies explained repeatedly, his apologies wearing thin as Lisa watched her dreams of their special day transform into someone else's vision. "We'll do something just for us afterward." But the cruelest blow came during the rehearsal dinner, when Caroline stood to offer a toast that felt more like a eulogy. "To Davies," Caroline said, her glass raised high, "who has always been willing to sacrifice everything for love. We just hope this time, love proves worthy of the sacrifice." The room erupted in polite applause while Lisa felt each clap like a slap. Later, in the hotel room, Davies tried to minimize his sister's words, but Lisa had finally seen the truth written in his family's faces. She wasn't gaining a family, she was taking their son away from them. The wedding itself passed in a blur of forced smiles and hollow congratulations. Margaret's friends whispered behind gloved hands while Davies's business associates offered handshakes that felt more like condolences. Only when Lisa's mother took her hands during the mother-daughter dance did she feel truly seen. "Baby girl," her mother whispered, "love is a beautiful thing, but don't lose yourself trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you." The frame-up began 6 months after the wedding, subtle as poison mixed into wine. First, Lisa's security clearances were questioned, routine audits that somehow always required additional documentation. Then her project assignments shifted, moving her away from critical systems toward busy work that wasted her talents. When the Hartwell Industries account was sabotaged, millions in client data deleted from supposedly secure servers, all evidence pointed to Lisa's access codes. The security footage showed a figure in dark clothing entering the server room at 2 a.m., using Lisa's key card and biometric scanner. Her laptop contained fragments of deleted files that suggested she'd been selling information to competitors. "This is impossible," Lisa told Davies as they sat in their kitchen, FBI search warrants scattered across the granite countertop. "You know I would never." "I know," Davies said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We'll fight this. We'll hire the best lawyers." "Your mother's lawyers," Lisa interrupted. "Your family's connections. Don't you see? I can't win this fight with borrowed weapons." The media-feeding frenzy began within hours. Whitmore Ayres' wife accused of corporate espionage screamed from every headline. Photos of Lisa's perp walk ran beside glamour shots from their wedding, creating a narrative of deception and betrayal that painted her as a gold digger who'd infiltrated high society for criminal gain. Davies' absence spoke louder than words. While Lisa met with public defenders and watched her reputation burn in real time, he attended emergency board meetings and family conferences where damage control took precedence over defending his wife. His phone calls became shorter, his touches more hesitant, as if her guilt had become contagious. The final break came the night before the trial, when Lisa found Davies packing his clothes with mechanical precision. "The lawyers think it would be better if we maintained some distance," he said without meeting her eyes. "Just until this is resolved." "Distance," Lisa repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Is that what your family suggested?" Davies' silence was answer enough. 3 years of marriage, reduced to a legal liability. Lisa watched the man she'd loved more than her own ambition walk out of their shared life, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and the emerald ring she'd placed on the nightstand like a returned promise. Alone in their empty house, now just her empty house, Lisa finally allowed herself to cry. But beneath the tears, something harder began to crystallize. If they wanted to destroy her for loving their son, she would make sure the destruction cut both ways. Prison was supposed to break her, but instead it forged Lisa into something sharper. 3 years in minimum security gave her time to study her enemies with the same intensity she'd once applied to debugging code. She read every article about the Whitmore family, memoized their business patterns, and slowly began to see the architecture of her destruction. The revelation came from an unexpected source, her cellmate, Maria Santos, a former accountant who'd discovered her boss laundering cartel money. "They didn't just want you gone, Hermana," Maria said during one of their late-night conversations. "They wanted you destroyed so completely that no one would ever question the story they told. But that kind of precision requires inside knowledge." Maria was right. The frame-up had been too perfect, too targeted to be the work of outsiders. Someone who knew Lisa's routines, her access codes, her digital footprint had orchestrated every detail. Someone with intimate knowledge of both her life and Whitmore financial security systems. The first breakthrough came through Marcus Chen, Lisa's former colleague who'd maintained contact despite the risk to his own career. His carefully coded letters revealed that strange things had been happening at Whitmore Financial since Lisa's arrest. Security protocols changed without explanation, certain files mysteriously corrupted, and Davies himself seeming increasingly isolated from family business decisions. But the real gift arrived in year 2. Divorce papers, signed by Davies and accompanied by a coldly professional letter from Margaret's attorneys. Along with the dissolution of their marriage came an unexpected windfall. Davies' guilt had apparently driven him to ensure Lisa received a substantial settlement, including full ownership of assets he could have legally claimed. Lisa signed the papers without emotion, but kept the bank routing information. Money, she'd learned, was just another form of data, and data could always be manipulated by someone who understood the systems. The plan began to form during her final year of incarceration. If the Whitmores wanted to play games with manufactured evidence and destroyed reputations, Lisa would teach them that some opponents were far more dangerous than they'd imagined. But this wouldn't be crude revenge. It would be justice, served with the same precision they'd used to destroy her. Her release date was set for October 15th. Davies would receive the first message on October 16th. Lisa emerged from prison transformed, leaner, harder, but with the same brilliant mind that had once made her indispensable to Whitmore Financial. The settlement money had been invested wisely through intermediaries, growing into a war chest that would fund her campaign for truth. She rented a modest apartment under a new name and began the careful work of rebuilding her life while orchestrating theirs downfall. The first move was digital archaeology. Using skills honed in her cybersecurity days and sharpened through years of studying her enemies, Lisa began excavating the buried truth of her case. Deep in archived server logs, hidden beneath layers of misdirection, she found the ghost signatures of the real perpetrator, access codes that didn't belong to her, timestamp discrepancies that revealed the sophisticated nature of the cover-up. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Caroline Whitmore, drowning in guilt and prescription pills since Lisa's conviction, had kept insurance, copies of emails, recorded phone conversations, even video footage of family meetings where Lisa's destruction was planned with chilling casualness. The approach had to be delicate. Lisa waited outside Caroline's therapist's office, timing her appearance for maximum psychological impact. "Hello, Caroline," Lisa said softly, watching Davies' sister flinch as if slapped. "Lisa, but how did you?" Caroline's words tumbled over each other as she clutched her purse like armor. "Free. Yes. And I know what you did. What you all did." Lisa's voice carried no anger, just the steady certainty of someone holding all the cards. "But I also know you've been drowning in it for 3 years. The pills aren't helping anymore, are they?" Caroline broke like a dam giving way, tears streaming as she confessed everything. Margaret's cold calculation, the hired technical experts who'd crafted the false evidence, even Davies' initial resistance until family pressure and manufactured doubt wore him down. Most damning of all, Caroline revealed the real reason for the frame-up. Lisa had discovered irregularities in the Hartwell account, not to steal information, but to report potential money laundering that would have exposed the family's darkest secrets. "I kept copies," Caroline whispered. "I was so scared they'd pin it on me next. I kept everything." The evidence Caroline provided was devastating. Hours of recorded conversations where Margaret coldly discussed ruining Lisa's life, technical documentation showing how the false evidence was created, even Davies' own voice expressing doubts about Lisa's guilt while agreeing to maintain public support for the prosecution. But Lisa's revenge would be more elegant than simple exposure. She began rebuilding her reputation methodically, taking a position with a boutique cybersecurity firm and slowly re-establishing her professional credibility. Meanwhile, she used her insider knowledge of Whitmore Financial to identify their vulnerabilities, not for criminal purposes, but to position herself as the solution to problems she knew were coming. The culmination came during a federal investigation into financial sector corruption. Lisa, now recognized as a leading expert in corporate cybersecurity fraud, was asked to consult on patterns of evidence manipulation in white-collar crime cases. Her analysis of her own case became a textbook example of sophisticated corporate frame-ups, leading to a broader investigation that swept up the Whitmore family's money laundering operations. When the FBI raided Whitmore Financial, they found Lisa's original security reports warning about the Hartwell irregularities, reports that had been buried to protect criminal activity. The same technical expertise used to frame Lisa now served to unravel the conspiracy that had destroyed her marriage and stolen 3 years of her life. Davies found Lisa at her new office on the day his family's empire began to crumble. He stood in her doorway like a ghost of their shared past, his once confident bearing broken by guilt and realization. "I know why you can't forgive me," he said quietly. "I wouldn't forgive me either." Lisa looked up from her work, studying the man she'd once loved with everything she had. Prison had taught her to see people clearly, stripped of the illusions that love often created. Davies wasn't evil. He was weak, a man who'd chosen family loyalty over moral courage when it mattered most. "I don't need your forgiveness, Davies," she said evenly. "I needed your faith when I was innocent and your courage when I was helpless. You chose your family's approval over my life. That choice has consequences. I know I failed you. I failed us." His voice cracked with genuine remorse. "But if I could go back." "You can't." Lisa's interruption was gentle but final. "And even if you could, we both know you'd make the same choice. You're not built for the kind of love that requires sacrifice. You never were." As Davies left her office for the last time, Lisa felt a strange peace settle over her. The love they'd shared had been real, but it had also been naive, built on the fantasy that feelings could overcome fundamental differences in character and courage. 5 years later, Lisa Michaels, she'd legally reclaimed her maiden name, stood before a congressional committee investigating corporate corruption and evidence manipulation. Her testimony about sophisticated frame-up techniques had led to new legislation protecting whistleblowers and reforming corporate accountability standards. The girl from Detroit who'd once been painted as a criminal had become a nationally recognized advocate for justice reform. The Whitmore family's empire had collapsed under federal investigation, with Margaret facing federal charges and Davies reduced to managing what remained of their legitimate holdings. Caroline had entered witness protection after her cooperation with federal investigators revealed connections to international money laundering operations that went far beyond what even Lisa had suspected. On a crisp October morning, exactly 8 years after that first kiss in the server room, Lisa received an unmarked envelope at her consulting firm's offices. Inside was a single photograph, their wedding day, with a note written in Davies's careful script. "You were right about everything. I hope you found the love you deserved. D." Lisa studied the photo for a long moment, seeing two people who'd believed love could conquer systemic inequality and family hatred. They'd been wrong, but beautifully wrong. Their mistake had been in thinking that love alone could bridge worlds that were never meant to touch. She placed the photo in her desk drawer next to other mementos from her past. Her prison ID badge, Caroline's original confession, and the emerald ring she'd never quite been able to throw away. They were artifacts from a war she'd won at great cost, reminders of the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. That evening, Lisa attended a charity gala supporting formerly incarcerated women re-entering the workforce. The cause had become her passion, funding programs that helped women rebuild their lives after the justice system had failed them. As she moved through the crowd of supporters and success stories, she caught sight of a familiar figure near the silent auction tables. Marcus Chen, her former colleague who'd never stopped believing in her innocence, raised his glass in a subtle toast. Beside him stood his wife and daughter, the family he'd protected by maintaining careful distance during Lisa's darkest years. Their eyes met across the room, and Lisa saw in his smile the recognition of someone who'd watched her transform pain into purpose. Later, walking alone through the city streets where her new life had taken root, Lisa reflected on the strange mathematics of love and revenge. She'd lost a marriage built on unequal foundations, but gained the unshakable knowledge of her own strength. The Whitmores had tried to destroy her for being the wrong kind of woman for their son, but in doing so, they'd forced her to become exactly the kind of woman the world needed. Her phone buzzed with a text from the young woman she'd been mentoring, another former prisoner trying to rebuild her career in technology. "Got the job. Thank you for believing in me when no one else would." Lisa smiled, typing back her congratulations. This was her legacy now, not the wife who'd been discarded when love became inconvenient, but the advocate who'd turned her destruction into other women's salvation. The Whitmores had planted evidence against her because she was the black wife they never wanted. But she'd grown from that poisoned soil into something they never could have imagined. A woman who'd learned that the best revenge was a life lived on her own terms, and the deepest love was the one she'd finally found for herself. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing a life touched by her work, a woman given a second chance, a future rewritten from the ashes of someone else's hatred. Lisa walked toward those lights, toward the life she'd built from the wreckage of the one that had been stolen from her, knowing that some stories of love and loss become something greater. Stories of survival, transformation, and the terrible beauty of justice served cold.